I buried my wife Margaret on March 14th, 2020. Cancer. 6 months from diagnosis to grave. I was 66 years old, standing in a cemetery in Calgary, watching them lower the only woman I'd ever loved into the ground. Last Tuesday, November 26th, 2025, I woke up in a nursing home in Scarborough, Ontario, the cheapest one in the province. $2,800 a month. I didn't remember going there. My son's wife, Stephanie, was in the hallway. I heard her voice through the door, talking to a nurse. Early dementia. We had no choice. He was forgetting everything. Couldn't manage the house anymore. It broke our hearts, but we had to do what was best for him. I'm not forgetting anything. I'm a retired petroleum engineer with $6.8 million in assets. I have a master's degree from the University of Alberta. I can recite pi to 20 decimal places. I remember every birthday, every anniversary, every promise I ever made to Margaret. And on August 7th, 2022, 2 years, 4 months, and 24 days after Margaret died, I put every penny I own into an irrevocable trust that Stephanie knows nothing about. Let me back up. Margaret and I met in 1975. I was 21, fresh out of university, working my first job at an oil field outside Edmonton. She was 19, working as a receptionist at the company office. She had red hair that caught the light like copper wire, and when she smiled, the whole room got brighter. We were married in February 1976. Everyone said we were too young, too impulsive. They were wrong. We had 44 years together. 44 years of Sunday morning farmers markets in Kensington. 44 years of her making cinnamon rolls every Saturday while I read the newspaper. 44 years of arguing about whose turn it was to take out the garbage and laughing about it 5 minutes later. She loved gardenias. Every anniversary, I bought her a gardenia plant. By our 44th anniversary in February 2020, we had 44 plants in the backyard of our house in Mount Royal. The whole yard smelled like heaven in the summer. In September 2019, Margaret started complaining about stomach pain. By October, the doctors found the tumor, pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. They gave her 6 months. She died in 5. March 14th, 2020. 6:47 in the morning. I was holding her hand. Our son David was there. So was Stephanie, his wife. Margaret looked at me and said, "Take care of our boy." Those were her last words. I promised her I would. The first year after Margaret died was the hardest year of my life. I moved through the house like a ghost. Everything reminded me of her. The coffee maker she'd used every morning, the chair where she'd sit to watch her cooking shows, the 44 gardenias in the backyard. David and Stephanie were wonderful at first. They came by 3 times a week, brought groceries, made sure I was eating. Stephanie would clean the kitchen while David and I watched hockey games. They invited me to Sunday dinners at their house in Inglewood. Their kids, Sophie and Ben, 12 and 9 at the time, would show me their school, projects. I was grateful. I told them so. "You don't know how much this means to me," I said, "having family close." "You're not alone, Dad," David said. "We're here for you." But around the 6-month mark, things started to change. It started with small questions. "Dad, are you still managing all your finances on your own?" Stephanie asked one Sunday in September 2020. We were sitting in their living room. The kids were upstairs. "I am," I said. "That's a lot of work. Have you thought about simplifying? Maybe consolidating accounts?" "I've been managing money for 50 years. I think I can handle it." She smiled. "Of course. I just worry about you. It's so much to keep track of." A month later, in October 2020, David brought it up. "Dad, Stephanie and I were talking. This house is way too big for one person. 3 bedrooms, that huge yard. What if you downsized? Got a condo? Something easier to maintain?" I looked at him. "Your mother and I bought this house in 1982. We raised you here. All my memories of her are in these walls." "I know, Dad, but memories go with you wherever you are. I'm not selling the house." He backed off, but I could see it in his eyes. Disappointment. 3 months later, in January 2021, Stephanie asked about my will. We were at their place for Sunday dinner. The kids were in the other room. David was barbecuing on the patio. Stephanie and I were alone in the kitchen. "Richard," she said, using my first name, which she rarely did, "have you updated your will since Margaret passed?" I looked at her carefully. "Why do you ask?" "Just making sure everything's in order. You know, for David and the kids. Estate planning is so important." "My will is fine." "Have you thought about setting up a trust? For Sophie and Ben's education?" "I have." "Oh, good. So it's already done." "I didn't say that." She pressed her lips together. A little flash of frustration. Then the smile came back. "Well, if you ever need help with that kind of thing, David works with a great financial advisor. We'd be happy to introduce you." "I have my own advisor." "Of course. I just meant—" "I know what you meant." That night, lying in bed in the house that still smelled faintly of Margaret's perfume, I realized something. My son and his wife were circling. The next morning, I called Harold Bennett, my neighbor of 30 years. Harold was 72, a retired RCMP officer who'd spent his career investigating fraud. We'd been friends since the day Margaret and I moved in back in 1990. "Harold," I said, "can we talk, privately?" We met at a Tim Hortons on 17th Avenue. I told him everything. The questions about money, the pressure to sell the house, the interest in my will. Harold listened without interrupting. When I finished, he sat back and exhaled. "Richard, I'm going to tell you something. In my 35 years as a cop, I saw this pattern 100 times. Adult children getting impatient about inheritance. It always starts the same way. Concern about your welfare. Suggestions about downsizing. Questions about your estate planning. You think they're after my money? I think they're testing the boundaries, seeing how much influence they have. And if you don't set hard limits now, it's going to escalate. David wouldn't do that. He's my son. David might not even realize what he's doing. But Stephanie, she knows exactly what she's doing." I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. Because deep down, I knew Harold was right. "What do I do?" I asked. "First, you protect yourself. Get your estate locked down tight. Second, you document everything. Every conversation, every request, every attempt to access your finances. Third, you find out what they're really after." I took Harold's advice. 2 days later, in January 2021, I met with my lawyer, Martin Zhao. Martin had handled Margaret's will and our estate planning for 20 years. He was 60, sharp as a razor, and when I told him what was happening, he didn't look surprised. "Richard, I see this every month. Family members trying to position themselves before a parent dies. Usually it starts with concern. Then it becomes pressure. Then, if they get desperate enough, it becomes exploitation. I want to protect myself. Then we need time to do this right. We'll build a fortress, an irrevocable trust. Everything goes in. The house, the investments, the life insurance. You can't change it once it's done, and neither can anyone else. But we need to move carefully. If we rush, they might catch on." "How long?" "Give me 18 months. We'll do it slowly, quietly." For the next year and a half, Martin and I worked in secret. We restructured everything, created legal documents, found independent trustees, set up protections that would be impossible to break. David and Stephanie didn't know any of this was happening. During that time, the pressure continued. Stephanie brought up assisted living twice. David suggested I get a financial advisor, his financial advisor. They asked about power of attorney, about joint bank accounts, about adding David's name to the house deed. I said no to everything. By summer 2022, I could see the frustration building. Sunday dinners became tense. Stephanie's smiles looked more like grimaces. David stopped calling as often. On August 7th, 2022, I sat in Martin's office and signed the final documents. Every asset I owned went into the Richard Morrison Family Trust. I was the trustee. The beneficiaries were Sophie and Ben, my grandchildren. They'd receive everything when they turned 25. David was listed as a contingent beneficiary. He'd get $100,000, but only if he didn't contest the trust or attempt to have me declared incompetent. Stephanie wasn't listed at all. Martin put the original documents in a safe deposit box at the TD Bank on 4th Street. He gave me copies to keep at home in my study, and he made one thing very clear. Richard, once this is signed, it's done. You can't undo it, even if you wanted to. Everything is locked away, protected. Good, I said. That's exactly what I want. I went home that day and looked at the 44 gardenias in the backyard, each one a year of marriage, each one a promise kept, and I thought about Margaret's last words. Take care of our boy. I was taking care of him by making sure he couldn't destroy himself, or me, trying to get money he hadn't earned. For about a year after that, things were quiet. David and Stephanie backed off. I thought maybe they'd given up. Maybe they'd realized I wasn't going to be pushed around. I was wrong. In September 2023, Stephanie started asking about my health. Richard, you seem tired lately. Are you sleeping okay? I'm fine. You seemed confused last week at Sophie's soccer game. You called her by the wrong name. I hadn't. I'd called her Sophie, but Stephanie was planting seeds. 2 weeks later, David asked if I'd ever considered a cognitive assessment. A what? Just a checkup, to make sure everything's working okay upstairs. You know, at your age. I'm 69, not 89. I know, Dad, but early detection is important. If there were any issues, we'd want to catch them early. There are no issues, but the seed was planted. And I realized what they were doing. They were building a narrative. Forgetful old man, declining health, can't manage on his own. They were setting me up. I called Martin immediately. They're trying to declare me incompetent, I said. Then we prove you're not. Get a full cognitive assessment from an independent doctor. Document everything. Make it impossible for them to claim otherwise. On October 17, 2023, I underwent a comprehensive evaluation with Dr. Patricia Kim, a geriatric specialist at Foothills Medical Center. Memory tests, logic puzzles, problem-solving exercises, interviews. I passed everything with perfect scores. Dr. Kim wrote in her report, Mr. Morrison shows no signs of cognitive decline. His memory, reasoning, and executive function are all well within normal range for his age. In fact, his cognitive abilities exceed the average for men in their late 60s. I kept that report in a file in my study, right next to the trust documents. But I didn't tell David or Stephanie about it. In January 2024, Stephanie made her first direct move. She showed up at my house on a Tuesday afternoon. Alone. No David. No kids. Richard, we need to talk. She came inside, sat down in the living room, in Margaret's chair. That bothered me more than it should have. David doesn't know I'm here, she said, but I'm worried about you. This house is too much. You're here all alone. What if something happened? What if you fell? I have an emergency alert system. That's not enough. Richard, I think it's time to consider assisted living. Not now, but soon. Just start looking at options. I'm not going to assisted living. You're being stubborn. I'm being independent. Richard, you're 70 years old. I'm 69. You're almost 70. Living alone. Managing this huge house. It's not safe. This conversation is over. She stood up. Her face was flushed. Fine. But when something happens, and it will, don't expect us to drop everything to take care of you. She left. 2 weeks later, David brought it up. Same script. Same pressure. And I realized they'd coordinated. Stephanie was the bad cop. David was the good cop. But they were working together. Dad, Stephanie told me she talked to you about assisted living. I wish she hadn't been so harsh about it. But she has a point. We worry about you. Don't. Dad, I said no, and I mean it. That was in January 2024. By March, they'd stopped visiting entirely. No more Sunday dinners, no calls, no texts. I thought they'd given up. They hadn't. They were planning. Before I tell you what happened next, what happened in October 2025 that led to me waking up in that nursing home, I need to know something. Where are you watching this from? Are you in a situation like mine? Do you have family members asking questions about your money, your house, your health? Are they building a narrative that you're not capable of managing your own life? Drop your location in the comments, because what I'm about to tell you might save you from what they did to me. The silence lasted 7 months. From March 2024 to October 2024, I didn't hear from David or Stephanie. Not a single call, not a text, not even a birthday card when I turned 70 in June. At first it hurt. My son had cut me off. My grandchildren, Sophie was 14 now, Ben was 11, were being kept from me. I'd see photos on Facebook, birthday parties, family vacations, soccer games. I wasn't in any of them. Harold noticed. We had coffee one morning in August 2024 at our usual Tim Hortons. "You haven't mentioned David in a while," he said. "Haven't talked to him in months." "Since you refused the assisted living thing?" "Since then." Harold set down his coffee. "Richard, that's not sulking, that's strategy. They're creating distance, building a case that you're isolated, alone, that you need intervention. You think they're still planning something? I think they're planning everything." He was right. On October 15th, 2025, a Tuesday morning, I woke up to someone pounding on my front door. It was 7:30 a.m. I pulled on my robe and went downstairs. Through the peephole, I saw David, and behind him 2 people I didn't recognize. A man and a woman, both in their 40s, wearing business casual clothing. I opened the door. "Dad," David said, "we need to talk. Can we come in?" "Who are these people?" "This is Sandra Chen and Robert Park. They're social workers from Alberta Health Services. They're here to do a wellness check." My stomach dropped. A wellness check. "Someone filed a report," the woman Sandra said. Her voice was professional, careful. "There are concerns about your ability to live independently. We're here to assess the situation." "Who filed a report?" "I did," David said. "Dad, I'm worried about you. We all are. You've been isolated. You're not answering calls. Your neighbors say they haven't seen you in weeks." That was a lie. Harold saw me every other day. But I didn't say that. Not yet. "I'm fine," I said. "I don't need a wellness check." "Mr. Morrison," Robert said, "we just need to come in and ask a few questions. Make sure you're safe. It won't take long." I could have refused, but refusing would have looked bad, like I had something to hide. So I let them in. They walked through my house like they were inspecting a crime scene. Sandra took notes on a tablet. Robert asked questions. "How often do you go grocery shopping?" "Once a week." "Do you cook for yourself?" "Every day." "What did you have for breakfast this morning?" "I haven't eaten yet. You woke me up at 7:30. Sandra wrote something down. They checked the kitchen. The refrigerator was full. I'd gone shopping 2 days ago. The counters were clean. Everything was organized. They checked the bathroom. Clean. Medicine cabinet organized. My prescriptions were all current, all labeled, all taken correctly. They checked the bedroom, made bed, clean clothes, nothing concerning, but they found what they were looking for in my study. On my desk, I had a stack of mail I hadn't opened yet. Bills, mostly, junk mail. I usually sorted through it on Sundays, but I'd been busy the previous weekend helping Harold fix his fence. "Mr. Morrison," Sandra said, "you have several unopened bills here. Some of them appear to be overdue notices. I pay my bills online. The paper bills are just copies. Can you show us your online banking?" I could have, but something about the way she asked made me pause. This wasn't about whether I could pay my bills. This was about documenting that I couldn't. "I don't think that's necessary," I said. "Dad," David said, "just show them. Prove you're managing everything." "I don't have to prove anything. I'm 71 years old. I own this house. I pay my bills. I'm not a child." Sandra and Robert exchanged a glance. "Mr. Morrison," Robert said, "we're not trying to take away your independence. We're just trying to ensure you're safe." They asked more questions. About my health, about my medications, about whether I had friends, family, social support. David stood there the whole time, nodding along, pretending to be concerned. After 45 minutes, they wrapped up. "Mr. Morrison," Sandra said, "based on what we've seen today, we don't have immediate concerns about your safety. However, we do recommend that you consider additional support, home care perhaps, or family involvement in managing your affairs." "I'll consider it," I lied. They left. David lingered. "Dad, I know you're angry, but we're doing this because we love you. You haven't called me in 7 months because you pushed us away. I refused help. You refused to even consider that you might need support." "I don't need support." "Yes, you do. And if you won't accept it voluntarily, we'll have to pursue other options." He left. I stood in my kitchen, shaking with rage. Then I called Martin. "They sent social workers," I said. "They're building a case." "Did they find anything?" "Unopened mail. They made it sound like I'm not managing my bills." "But you are." "Of course I am. Everything's on autopay. But they don't care about the truth. They care about the narrative." Martin was quiet for a moment. "Richard, we need to be proactive. Get statements from your bank showing all bills paid on time. Get a letter from your doctor confirming your health. Get a statement from Harold confirming he sees you regularly and you're functioning fine." "Will that be enough?" "I don't know, but it's better than nothing." Over the next 2 weeks, I gathered everything Martin asked for. Bank statements showing every bill paid on time for the past 5 years. A letter from Dr. Kim confirming I'd passed my cognitive assessment with perfect scores. A signed statement from Harold attesting that I was in good health, of sound mind, and living independently without issues. I thought that would be the end of it. On October 29th, 2025, David and Stephanie showed up at my house with 2 paramedics and a police officer. It was 6 p.m. I was making dinner. Roast, chicken, the way Margaret used to make it. The doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw the group on my porch. My blood went cold. I opened the door. "Dad," David said, "we need you to come with us." "Where?" "There's a bed available at Maple Ridge Care Center in Scarborough. It's a really nice facility. We've arranged everything." "I'm not going anywhere," Stephanie pushed forward. "Richard, you can't keep living like this. Alone, isolated. You need proper care." "I don't need care. I need you to leave my property." The police officer stepped forward. He was young, maybe 30, and he looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Morrison, I'm Officer Williams with Calgary Police. Your family has expressed concerns about your welfare. We're here to ensure you're safe." "I'm safe in my own home." "Sir, they have documentation from social workers indicating concerns about your ability to live independently." "That documentation is based on unopened junk mail. I pay my bills. I manage my life. I'm not incompetent." "We're not saying you're incompetent," Stephanie said. "We're saying you need help." "I don't want your help." One of the paramedics spoke up. "Mr. Morrison, we can do this easy or we can do this hard. But either way, we need you to come with us for an evaluation." "An evaluation where?" "Foothills Hospital. Just a quick psychiatric assessment. If everything checks out, you can come right back home." I looked at David, my son, the boy I'd raised, the man I'd loved and supported for 47 years, and I saw nothing in his eyes but calculation. "If I refuse?" I asked. Officer Williams shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, your family can petition for an emergency guardianship order. Given the social worker report and their concerns, a judge might grant it. If that happens, we'll be back with a warrant. I'd rather not go that route." They had me cornered. If I fought this, it would look like I was resisting help, like I was irrational, like I needed the very intervention they were pushing for. "Fine," I said. "Let me get my coat." I went inside, grabbed my phone, my wallet, my keys, and quickly, while they waited on the porch, I sent a text to Harold. "They're taking me. Foothills Hospital. Call Martin." Then I walked out and got into the ambulance. The quick evaluation at Foothills Hospital lasted 6 hours. They put me in a room in the psychiatric ward, made me talk to a crisis counselor, asked me the same questions over and over. What's the date? Who's the Prime Minister? Count backwards from 100 by 7s. I answered everything correctly, but then they asked about my living situation, about whether I felt safe at home, about whether I had support. "My son is trying to take my house," I said. The counselor wrote something down. "Why do you think that?" "Because he's been asking about my will, my finances. He sent social workers to my house." "Do you feel your son is a threat to you?" "I feel he wants my money." More notes. After 6 hours, a psychiatrist came in, Dr. James Foster. He was maybe 50, wearing a wrinkled dress shirt and wire-rimmed glasses. "Mr. Morrison, I've reviewed your evaluation. You're cognitively intact. No signs of psychosis or acute mental illness. However, your family has expressed significant concerns about your ability to live independently." "My family wants my house. I understand there's conflict. But Mr. Morrison, you're 71 years old, living alone in a large house. Your family reports you've been socially isolated. You have unopened mail. You're expressing paranoid ideation about your son." "It's not paranoid, if it's true." "Perhaps, but here's the situation. Your son has legal standing to petition for guardianship. If he does, and a judge agrees, you'll lose control over your finances and your living situation anyway. The easier path, for you, is to accept some level of assistance voluntarily." "What kind of assistance?" "Assisted living. A place where you have your own apartment, but staff available if you need help. Meals provided, social activities. It's not a nursing home. It's independent living with support." "And if I refuse?" Dr. Foster took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "Then your son will likely pursue guardianship, and given the documentation they've already compiled, he'll probably win." I sat there in that sterile hospital room, fluorescent lights humming overhead, and realized I'd lost. Or at least, they thought I had. "There's a facility in Scarborough," I said slowly. "Maple Ridge. They mentioned it." "I'm familiar with it. It's adequate." "Adequate. Not good. Adequate. If I agree to go there, will this end?" "For now." "Fine. I'll go." Dr. Foster looked relieved. "I think that's the right choice, Mr. Morrison." It wasn't. But they didn't need to know that yet. They transported me to Maple Ridge Care Center the next morning. David and Stephanie met me there. They'd already moved some of my clothes into a small room on the second floor. Single bed, tiny bathroom, window overlooking a parking lot. This room cost $2,800 a month. "Dad," David said, "I know this is hard, but it's for the best. You'll be safe here, and we can visit." "Can I go back to my house?" I asked. "Get more of my things?" "Eventually, once you're settled." "What about my car?" "We'll keep it at our place. You don't really need to drive anymore." "My mail?" "We'll forward it." They were cutting me off, piece by piece, isolating me, taking control. But I still had my phone, and that night, after they left, I called Martin. "They put me in a nursing home," I said quietly, "Maple Ridge in Scarborough." "Did they force you?" "They gave me a choice between going voluntarily or fighting a guardianship petition I'd probably lose." "Damn it." "Richard, we need to move fast. How much freedom do you have there?" "I can walk around, make phone calls, but they're monitoring me." "Can you live?" "I think so. It's not locked. But if I leave, they'll use it as evidence I'm not competent to. Make my own decisions." "Okay, here's what we do. You stay there for 1 week. Act compliant, friendly, show them you're fine. Then next Tuesday, November 26th, you walk out. Tell them you're going for a walk. Meet me at the Tim Hortons on Kingston Road. We'll file an emergency motion to have you released from any guardianship proceeding before it starts. And we'll use the trust documents to prove they have no claim to your assets. Will that work? It has to." For 6 days, I played the role of the cooperative elderly man. I ate the terrible cafeteria food. I attended the art therapy sessions. I smiled at the staff. I let David and Stephanie visit and pretended to be grateful. And the whole time, I watched. I listened. I learned. The staff at Maple Ridge were overworked and underpaid. The place was understaffed. Residents wandered the halls at odd hours. Medications were sometimes delayed. The food was barely edible. This was where my son and his wife wanted me to die, in a $2,100 a month warehouse for inconvenient elderly people. On Tuesday, November 26th, at 2 p.m., I walked out the front door of Maple Ridge Care Center. Told the receptionist I was going for a walk. She barely looked up. I walked 3 blocks to the Tim Hortons on Kingston Road. Martin was waiting. "You made it," he said. "What now?" "Now we fight." Have you ever had to fight your own family in court? Have you ever had to prove that you're not the person they're describing? Confused, incompetent, unable to manage your own life? If you're watching this and you're in a similar situation, or you know someone who is, leave a comment. Tell me where you're from, because what happened next, what happened in that courtroom last week, might be exactly what you need to hear. Martin filed the emergency motion that same afternoon. By Wednesday morning, we had a court date. Friday, December 2nd, 2025. 4 days away. "They're going to argue you're incompetent," Martin said. We were in his office on Thursday, the day before the hearing. "They'll bring up the unopened mail, the social worker report, the fact that you walked out of Maple Ridge." "I walked out because I was never legally required to be there." "I know that. You know that. But they're going to spin it as evidence of poor judgment. We need to be ready." He spread documents across his desk. Bank statements showing every bill paid on time for 5 years. The cognitive assessment from Dr. Kim. Harold's sworn statement. My medical records showing I was in excellent health for 71. "And then," Martin said, "we show them this." He pulled out the trust documents, the ones I'd signed on August 7th, 2022. "The moment we reveal this trust, everything changes. They'll realize they have no claim, no leverage, nothing." "Will they be angry?" Martin smiled. "They'll be furious." Friday morning arrived cold and gray. December in Calgary. I put on my best suit, the navy one Margaret had bought me for our 40th anniversary. My hands shook as I tied my tie. Harold drove me to the courthouse. "You've got this," he said. "You're not the one who should be nervous. They are." The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, a judge's bench at the front. David and Stephanie sat on one side with their lawyer, a man in his 50s with silver hair and an expensive suit. His name was Robert Chen. I sat on the other side with Martin. Harold sat in the gallery behind me. The judge entered, the Honorable Patricia Morrison. She was in her early 60s, with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen every kind of family dysfunction. "This is an emergency hearing," she said. "Morrison Family Matter. Mr. Chen, you're representing the petitioners?" "Yes, Your Honor. David Morrison and Stephanie Morrison are petitioning for emergency guardianship of Richard Morrison, the respondent. We believe Mr. Morrison is no longer capable of managing his own affairs and requires immediate intervention." Judge Morrison looked at me. "Mr. Morrison, you're represented by Martin Zhao?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Proceed, Mr. Chen." Robert Chen stood. "Your Honor, the evidence is clear. Mr. Morrison is 71 years old, living alone in a large house he can no longer maintain. Social workers from Alberta, Health Services, conducted a wellness check and found concerning indicators. Unopened mail suggesting financial mismanagement. Social isolation. When Mr. Morrison's family arranged for him to receive appropriate care at Maple Ridge Care Center, he fled the facility, demonstrating poor judgment and possible paranoid ideation. He submitted the social worker report. Dr. Foster's psychiatric evaluation. Statements from David and Stephanie describing my decline. Mr. Morrison's son, David Morrison, is deeply concerned about his father's welfare. He's witnessed firsthand the deterioration in his father's ability to manage daily tasks. We're asking the court to grant emergency guardianship so that Mr. Morrison can receive the care he needs." Judge Morrison looked at the documents. "Mr. Zhao, your response?" Martin stood. "Your Honor, this petition is not about Mr. Morrison's welfare. It's about money. Specifically, it's about Mr. Morrison's $6.8 million estate. Let me address the so-called evidence." He pulled out my bank statements. The unopened mail, junk mail, and duplicate paper bills. Every single one of Mr. Morrison's bills has been paid on time, automatically for 5 years. Here are the records. He submitted them to the judge. The social isolation. Mr. Morrison has regular contact with his neighbor, Harold Bennett, a retired RCMP officer who's known him for 30 years. Mr. Bennett has provided a sworn statement attesting to Mr. Morrison's excellent mental and physical health. Harold's statement went to the judge. The psychiatric evaluation. Dr. Foster himself noted that Mr. Morrison is cognitively intact with no signs of mental illness. The only reason Mr. Morrison agreed to go to Maple Ridge was because he was coerced. He was told that if he didn't go voluntarily, his son would petition for guardianship anyway, and he'd likely lose. Martin paused. And as for Mr. Morrison's cognitive abilities, we have a comprehensive evaluation from Dr. Patricia Kim, a geriatric specialist at Foothills Medical Center, conducted in October 23. Perfect scores across the board. Dr. Kim's report joined the pile on the judge's desk. Your Honor, Mr. Morrison is a retired petroleum engineer with a master's degree from the University of Alberta. He manages his own finances. He lives independently. He's in excellent health. The only problem is that his son and daughter-in-law want access to his money, and he won't give it to them. Robert Chen stood. Your Honor, that's an inflammatory accusation with no basis, in fact. It has every basis, in fact, Martin interrupted, and I can prove it. He pulled out a thick folder. These are text messages between David Morrison and Stephanie Morrison, obtained legally from Mr. Morrison's phone, which his son tried to confiscate when he was at Maple Ridge. I'll read a few excerpts. Martin opened the folder. October 16th, 2025, the day after the social worker visit. Stephanie to David. How long until we can access the accounts? David replies. Lawyer says once guardianship goes through, we get POA. Then we can liquidate. Stephanie's face went white. October 30th, the day after Mr. Morrison was taken to the hospital. Stephanie to David. Did you check if he changed the will? David. Martin Zhao won't return my calls. We might need to contest whatever he has. Judge Morrison's expression hardened. November 1st. Stephanie to David. The house should sell for at least $3.2 million. We pay off the mortgage. That's $680,000 clear, plus his investments. We're finally going to be okay. Your Honor. Robert Chen tried to interrupt. I'm not finished, Martin said. November 15th. David to Stephanie. Once he's at Maple Ridge, we move fast. Get the POA filed, freeze his accounts, list the house. He can't fight us if he's locked up. The courtroom was silent. Your Honor, Martin continued, this is not a family concerned about an elderly man's welfare. This is financial elder abuse, plain and simple. Judge Morrison looked at David and Stephanie. Mr. Morrison, Ms. Morrison, do you deny these messages? David's lawyer whispered something to him. David shook his head. Your Honor, we were stressed. Our finances are difficult. We were just trying to figure out how to help my father. By selling his house and taking his money? Judge Morrison's voice was ice. Stephanie started crying. We were drowning. We owe $680,000 on our mortgage. David's job is unstable. We thought Richard didn't need all that money. He's alone. He doesn't use it. We have kids to raise. Stop talking, Robert Chen hissed. But Stephanie couldn't stop. He's been selfish for years. After Mom died, he just sat in that house with all that money. And we were struggling. And he wouldn't help us. We just wanted what we deserved. Deserved? Judge Morrison's voice cut like glass. You deserved your father's estate while he's still alive. Stephanie finally went quiet. Martin stood again. Your Honor, there's one more thing the court needs to know. The reason David and Stephanie are so desperate to gain control of Mr. Morrison's assets is because they can't. He pulled out the final document, the one we'd been saving. On August 7th, 2022, more than 3 years ago, Mr. Morrison established an irrevocable trust, the Richard Morrison Family Trust. Every asset he owns is in that trust. His house, his investments, his life insurance, everything. He handed the document to the judge. Mr. Morrison is the trustee. The beneficiaries are his grandchildren, Sophie and Ben Morrison. They'll receive the assets when they turn 25. David Morrison is listed as a contingent beneficiary for $100,000, conditional on him not contesting the trust or attempting to have his father declared incompetent. Martin turned to face David and Stephanie, which means that as of this moment, you get nothing. You've contested. You've attempted to have him declared incompetent. You've violated the terms. You're out. David stood up. That's not legal. He can't just... It's completely legal, Martin said. The trust is irrevocable. Mr. Morrison can't change it even if he wanted to. It's locked. Forever. The color drained from Stephanie's face. No, that's not possible. The house, the money, it has to. It doesn't have to do anything, Martin said calmly. It's gone, out of your reach, and it has been for more than 3 years. Judge Morrison read through the trust documents. Then she looked up at David and Stephanie. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. You've spent years pressuring your father to give you access to assets that you had no legal claim to. You filed false reports with social workers. You had him involuntarily committed for a psychiatric evaluation. You placed him in a care facility against his will. You attempted to gain guardianship. All for money that was never yours to begin with. Robert Chen stood. Your Honor, my clients were genuinely concerned. Your clients committed elder abuse, Judge Morrison said, and they've wasted this court's time. She turned to me. Mr. Morrison, do you wish to press charges against your son and daughter-in-law? I looked at David, my son, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike, the man I'd supported through college, the father of my grandchildren, and I thought about Margaret's last words. Take care of our boy. I'd taken care of him. I'd protected him from himself. I'd made sure Sophie and Ben would be provided for, even if their parents weren't. But some betrayals can't be forgiven. Yes, Your Honor, I said. I want charges filed. Judge Morrison nodded. The petition for guardianship is denied. Furthermore, I'm issuing a restraining order. Mr. David Morrison and Ms. Stephanie Morrison are prohibited from contacting Mr. Richard Morrison or coming within 200 meters of his residence for a period of 5 years. I'm referring this matter to the Crown Attorney's Office for potential criminal charges related to elder abuse and attempted fraud. She banged her gavel. We're adjourned. David and Stephanie sat frozen. Their lawyer gathered his papers quickly, already distancing himself from the disaster. I stood up. Harold clapped me on the shoulder. Well done. Martin shook my hand. It's over, Richard. You won. But it didn't feel like winning. It felt like losing my family and keeping my dignity. That was 5 days ago. Today is December 7th, 2025. I'm back in my house in Mount Royal, the house Margaret and I bought in 1982, the house where we raised David, the house with 44 gardenias in the backyard. This morning I went outside and looked at those plants. Some of them are struggling now. They need care, attention, love. I'll take care of them, just like I took care of everything Margaret and I built together. Harold came over this afternoon. We had coffee on my porch, even though it was cold. He told me the Crown Attorney filed charges yesterday. David and Stephanie are each facing 1 count of elder abuse and 1 count of attempted fraud. Their lawyers trying to negotiate a plea deal. How do you feel about that? Harold asked. I don't know, I said honestly. They're going to have criminal records. Stephanie might lose her CPA license. David might lose his job. And Sophie and Ben will still get the trust when they're 25, Harold said. You made sure of that. You protected them from their parents' mistakes. He's right. In 11 years, Sophie will get her share. In 14 years, Ben will get his. They'll be adults. They'll understand why their grandfather did what he did. Or maybe they won't. Maybe they'll hate me for putting their parents in jail. But I'll be dead by then anyway. I'm 71 years old. Margaret has been gone for 5 years, 8 months, and 23 days. I've lived alone in this house for almost 6 years now, and I'm okay with that. Because here's what I learned. Your family isn't always the people who love you. Sometimes your family is the people who want something from you. And when you stop giving it to them, you find out who they really are. David and Stephanie revealed themselves. They chose money over me. They chose their debts over my dignity. They chose to lock me in a 2,880-month warehouse and steal my life's work, rather than simply accept that it wasn't theirs. I don't regret protecting myself. I don't regret the trust. I don't regret fighting back. The house is mine. The money is safe. My grandchildren will be provided for. And I'm living on my own terms. That's not selfishness. That's survival. If this story resonated with you, if you're dealing with family members who are eyeing your assets, circling like vultures, building narratives about your incompetence, document everything. Get a lawyer you trust. Set up protections they can't break. And don't feel guilty for choosing yourself. Because at the end of the day, the only person guaranteed to look out for your best interests is you. My name is Richard Morrison. I'm 71 years old. I live in Calgary. And I survived my own son trying to erase me. Subscribe if this story meant something to you. Hit the like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. Or if you've experienced something similar. Your story matters. Your dignity matters. And it's never too late to fight for both. Take care of yourselves out there. And remember, family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who stand beside you when blood turns cold. Thank you for listening.